The Interlopers by Saki. In a forest of mixed growth, somewhere on the eastern spurs of the Carpathians, a man stood one winter night watching and listening, as though he waited for some beast of the woods to come within the range of his vision, and later of his rifle. But the game for whose presence he kept so keen an outlook was none that figured in the sportsman's calendar as lawful and proper for the chase. Ulrich von Gradwitz patrolled the dark forest in quest of a human enemy. The forest lands of Gradwitz were of wide extent and well stocked with game. The narrow strip of precipitous woodland that lay on its outskirt was not remarkable for the game it harbored or the shooting it afforded, but it was the most jealously guarded of all its owner's territorial possessions. A famous lawsuit in the days of his grandfather had wrested it from the illegal possession of a neighboring family of petty landowners. The dispossessed party had never acquiesced in the judgment of the courts, and a long series of poaching affrays and similar scandals had embittered the relationships between the families for 3 generations. The neighbor feud had grown into a personal one since Ulrich had come to be head of his family. If there was a man in the world whom he detested and wished ill to, it was George Znaeum, the inheritor of the quarrel and the tireless game-snatcher and raider of the disputed border forest. The feud might, perhaps, have died down or been compromised if the personal ill will of the 2 men had not stood in the way. As boys they had thirsted for one another's blood. As men each prayed that misfortune might fall on the other. And this wind-scourged winter night Ulrich had banded together as foresters to watch the dark forest, not in quest of forfeited quarry, but to keep a lookout for the prowling thieves whom he suspected of being afoot from across the land boundary. The roebuck, which usually kept in the sheltered hollows during a storm wind, were running like driven things tonight, and there was a movement and unrest among the creatures that were wont to sleep through the dark hours. Assuredly there was a disturbing element in the forest, and Ulrich could guess the quarter from whence it came. He strayed away by himself from the watchers whom he had placed in ambush on the crest of the hill, and wandered far down the steep slopes amid the wild tangle of undergrowth, peering through the tree trunks and listening through the whistling and skirting of the wind and the restless beating of the branches for sight or sound of the marauders. If only on this wild night in this dark, lone spot he might come across George Znaeum, man to man, with none to witness, that was the wish that was uppermost in his thoughts. And as he stepped around the trunk of a huge beech, he came face to face with the man he sought. The 2 enemies stood, glaring at one another for a long, silent moment. Each had a rifle in his hand. Each had hate in his heart and murder uppermost in his mind. The chance had come to give full play to the passions of a lifetime. But a man who has been brought up under the code of a restraining civilization cannot easily nerve himself to shoot down his neighbor in cold blood and without words spoken, except for an offense against his hearth and honor. And before the moment of hesitation had given way to action, a deed of nature's own violence overwhelmed them both. A fierce shriek of the storm had been answered by a splitting crash over their heads, and ere they could leap aside, a massive falling beech tree had thundered down on them. Ulrich von Gradwitz found himself stretched on the ground, one arm numb beneath him and the other held almost as helplessly in a tight tangle of forked branches, while both legs were pinned beneath the fallen mass. His heavy shooting boots had saved his feet from being crushed to pieces, but if his fractures were not as serious as they might have been, at least it was evident that he could not move from his present position till someone came to release him. The descending twigs had slashed the skin of his face, and he had to wink away some drops of blood from his eyelashes before he could take in a general view of the disaster. At his side, so near that under ordinary circumstances he could almost have touched him, lay George Znaeum, alive and struggling, but obviously as helplessly pinioned down as himself. All round them lay a thick strewn wreckage of splintered branches and broken twigs. Relief at being alive and exasperation at his captive plight brought a strange medley of pious thank-offerings and sharp curses to Ulrich's lips. George, who was nearly blinded with the blood which trickled across his eyes, stopped his struggling for a moment to listen, and then gave a short, snarling laugh. "So you're not killed as you ought to be, but you're caught anyway," he cried. "Caught fast. Ho, what a jest! Ulrich von Gradwitz snared in his stolen forest. There's real justice for you." And he laughed again, mockingly and savagely. "I'm caught in my own forest land," retorted Ulrich. "When my men come to release us, you will wish, perhaps, that you were in a better plight than caught poaching in a neighbor's land. Shame on you." George was silent for a moment. Then he answered quietly, "Are you sure that your men will find much to release? I have men too in the forest tonight, close behind me, and they will be here first into the releasing. When they drag me out from under these damned branches, it won't need much clumsiness on their part to roll this massive trunk right over on the top of you. Your men will find you dead under a fallen beech tree. For form's sake, I shall send my condolences to your family." "It is a useful hint," said Ulrich fiercely. "My men had orders to follow in 10 minutes this time, 7 of which most have gone by already, and when they get me out, I will remember the hint. Only as you will have met your death poaching on my lands, I don't think I can decently send any message of condolence to your family." "Good," snarled George, "good. We fight this quarrel out to the death, you and I and our foresters, with no cursed interlopers to come between us. Death and damnation to you, Ulrich von Gradwitz." "The same to you, George Znaeym, forest thief, game snatcher." Both men spoke with the bitterness of possible defeat before them, for each knew that it might be long before his men would seek him out or find him. It was a bare matter of chance which party would arrive first on the scene. Both had now given up the useless struggle to free themselves from the mass of wood that held them down. Ulrich limited his endeavors to an effort to bring his one partially free arm near enough to his outer coat pocket to draw out his wine flask. Even when he had accomplished that operation, it was long before he could manage the unscrewing of the stopper or get any of the liquid down his throat. But what a heaven-sent draught it seemed! It was an open winter, and little snow had fallen as yet. Hence the captive suffered less from the cold than might have been the case at the season of the year. Nevertheless, the wine was warming and reviving to the wounded man, and he looked across with something like a throb of pity to where his enemy lay, just keeping the groans of pain and weariness from crossing his lips. "Could you reach this flask if I threw it over to you?" asked Ulrich suddenly. "There is good wine in it, and one may as well be as comfortable as one can. Let us drink, even if tonight one of us dies." "No, I can scarcely see anything. There is so much blood caked around my eyes," said George, "and in any case I don't drink wine with an enemy." Ulrich was silent for a few minutes, and lay listening to the wary screeching of the wind. An idea was slowly forming and growing in his brain, an idea that gained strength every time that he looked across at the man who was fighting so grimly against pain and exhaustion. In the pain and languor that Ulrich himself was feeling, the old fierce hatred seemed to be dying down. "Neighbor," he said presently, "do as you please if your men come first. It was a fair compact. But as for me, I've changed my mind. If my men are the first to come, you shall be the first to be helped, as though you were my guest. We have quarrelled like devils all our lives over this stupid strip of forest, where the trees can't even stand upright in a breath of wind. Lying here tonight thinking, I've come to think we've been rather fools. There are better things in life than getting the better of a boundary dispute. Neighbor, if you will help me to bury the old quarrel, I will ask you to be my friend." George Znaeym was silent for so long that Ulrich thought perhaps he had fainted with the pain of his injuries. Then he spoke slowly and in jerks. "How the whole region would stare and gabble if we rode into the market square together. No one living can remember seeing a Znaeym and a von Gradwitz talking to one another in friendship. And what peace there would be among the forester folk if we ended our feud tonight. And if we choose to make peace among our people, there is none other to interfere. No interlopers from outside. You would come and keep the Sylvester night beneath my roof, and I would come and feast on some high day at your castle. I would never fire a shot in your land, save when you invited me as a guest, and you should come and shoot with me down in the marshes where the wildfowl are. In all the countryside there are none that could hinder if we willed to make peace. I never thought to have wanted to other than hate you all my life, but I think I have changed my mind about things too this last half hour. And you offered me your wine flask. Ulrich von Gradwitz, I will be your friend." For a space both men were silent, turning over in their minds the wonderful changes that this dramatic reconciliation would bring about. In the cold, gloomy forest, with the wind tearing in fitful gusts through the naked branches and whistling round the tree trunks, they lay and waited for the help that would now bring release and succor to both parties. And each prayed a private prayer that his men might be the first to arrive, so that he might be the first to show honorable attention to the enemy that had become a friend. Presently, as the wind dropped for a moment, Ulrich broke silence. "Let's shout for help," he said. "In this lull our voices may carry a little way." "They won't carry far through the trees and undergrowth," said George, "but we can try. Together, then." The two raised their voices in a prolonged hunting call. "Together again," said Ulrich a few minutes later, after listening in vain for an answering halloo. "I heard something that time, I think," said Ulrich. "I heard nothing but the pestilential wind," said George hoarsely. There was silence again for some minutes, and then Ulrich gave a joyful cry. "I can see figures coming through the wood. They are following the way I came down the hillside." Both men raised their voices in as loud a shout as they could muster. "They hear us! They've stopped! Now they see us! They're running down the hill towards us!" cried Ulrich. "How many of them are there?" asked George. "I can't see distinctly," said Ulrich. 9 or 10. "Then they are yours," said George. "I had only 7 out with me." "They are making all the speed they can, brave lads," said Ulrich gladly. "Are they your men?" asked George. "Are they your men?" he repeated impatiently as Ulrich did not answer. "No," said Ulrich, with a laugh, the idiotic chattering laugh of a man unstrung with hideous fear. "Who are they?" asked George quickly, straining his eyes to see what the other would gladly not have seen. Wolves. End of
The Gingerbread Man by Sarah Cohn Bryant. Once upon a time there was a little old woman and a little old man, and they lived all alone in a little old house. They hadn't any little girls or any little boys at all. So one day the little old woman made a boy out of gingerbread. She made him a chocolate jacket and put cinnamon seeds in it for buttons. His eyes were made of fine fat currants. His mouth was made of rose-colored sugar, and he had a gay little cap of orange sugar candy. When the little old woman had rolled him out and dressed him up and pinched his gingerbread shoes into shape, she put him in a pan. Then she put the pan in the oven and shut the door, and she thought, "Now I shall have a little boy of my own." When it was time for the gingerbread boy to be done, she opened the oven door and pulled out the pan. Out jumped the little gingerbread boy onto the floor, and away he ran, out of the door and down the street. The little old woman and the little old man ran after him as fast as they could, but he just laughed and shouted, "Run, run, as fast as you can! You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man!" And they couldn't catch him. The little gingerbread boy ran on until he came to a cow by the roadside. "Stop, little gingerbread boy," said the cow. "I want to eat you." The little gingerbread boy laughed and said, "I have run away from a little old woman and a little old man, and I can run away from you, I can." And as the cow chased him, he looked over his shoulder and cried, "Run, run, as fast as you can! You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man!" And the cow couldn't catch him. The little gingerbread boy ran on, till he came to a horse in the pasture. "Please stop, little gingerbread boy," said the horse. "You look very good to eat." But the little gingerbread boy laughed out loud. "Oh ho, oh ho," he said. "I have run away from a little old woman, a little old man, a cow, and I can run away from you, I can." And as the horse chased him, he looked over his shoulder and cried, "Run, run, as fast as you can! You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man!" and the horse couldn't catch him. By and by the little gingerbread boy came to a barn full of threshers. When the threshers smelled the gingerbread boy, they tried to pick him up and said, "Don't run so fast, little gingerbread boy. You look very good to eat." But the little gingerbread boy ran harder than ever, and as he ran he cried out, "I have run away from a little old woman, a little old man, a cow, a horse, and I can run away from you, I can." And when he found that he was ahead of the threshers, he turned and shouted back at them, "Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man." And the threshers couldn't catch him. Then the little gingerbread boy ran faster than ever. He ran and ran until he came to a field full of mowers. When the mowers saw how fine he looked, they ran after him, calling out, wait a bit, little gingerbread boy, we wish to eat you." But the little gingerbread boy laughed harder than ever, and ran like the wind. Oh ho, he said. "I have run away from a little old woman, a little old man, a cow, a horse, a barn full of threshers, and I can run away from you, I can." And when he found that he was ahead of the mowers, he turned and shouted back at them, "Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man." And the mowers couldn't catch him. By this time, the little gingerbread boy was so proud that he didn't think anybody could catch him. Pretty soon he saw a fox coming across a field. The fox looked at him and began to run, but the little gingerbread boy shouted across to him, "You can't catch me." The fox began to run faster, and the little gingerbread boy ran faster, and as he ran he chuckled, "I have run away from a little old woman, a little old man, a cow, a horse, a barn full of threshers, a field of mowers, and I can run away from you, I can. Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man." "Why," said the fox, "I would not catch you if I could. I would not think of disturbing you." Just then the little gingerbread boy came to a river. He could not swim across, and he wanted to keep running away from the cow and the horse and the people. "Jump on my tail, and I will take you across," said the fox. So the little gingerbread boy jumped on the fox's tail, and the fox swam into the river. When he was a little way from shore, he turned his head and said, "You are too heavy on my tail, little gingerbread boy. I fear I shall let you get wet. Jump on my back." The little gingerbread boy jumped on his back. A little further out, the fox said, "I am afraid the water will cover you there. Jump on my shoulder." The little gingerbread boy jumped on his shoulder. In the middle of the stream, the fox said, "Oh dear! Little gingerbread boy, my shoulder is sinking. Jump on my nose, and I can hold you out of water." So the little gingerbread boy jumped on his nose. The minute the fox got on shore, he threw back his head and gave a snap. "Dear me," said the little gingerbread boy, "I am a quarter gone." The next minute he said, "Why, I am half gone." The next minute he said, "My goodness gracious, I am 3/4 gone." And after that, the little gingerbread boy never said anything more at all. End of The Gingerbread Man by Sarah Cohn Bryant.